off with a 1,600-meter run for time. At that 12-minute mark, the athletes get to use the remaining time to recover from the time they finish that run, and then they're into a sprint with a weighted start. It's 100 pounds. They're going to pick it up on every opposite turn for a shuttle sprint all the way down the length of the football field.
We've got 2 heats to close individual action out tonight for the men. The first heat will be the bottom half of the athletes after 3 scored events so far, as they will get set to take on their 1,600-meter run. A lot of athletes that had decent performances in the 3rd event, but you've got to slowly start stacking those bricks to get on top of the podium, and it starts tonight.
Stand by.
Heat number 1, individual men. Event number 4 is off. We start on the track, 1,600-meter run, 4 laps around the track here at Farrington Field.
What we've seen so far from the women is that the athletes that tend to kick out in front are doing so in order to create some space between themselves and the field so they can run their own race. They can set the tone, keep a good cadence, and right out the front we see Luke Parker doing just that in this first heat of men.
Luke Parker leading the charge. Behind him, Austin Hatfield, Jack Rosema. But as we've seen before, this is a pacing game, a strategy game. It's not just a flat sprint from the start.
It's absolutely not a sprint, and it's one of those events that can be very trying to pace appropriately if you don't have the experience with this energy system. Going this hard to an athlete that's a CrossFit in our space, what do? We constantly vary our styles of training. That means we sprint, we go much longer than a mile, and sometimes we're able to nail that energy system. And for a lot of these athletes, it's been quite a long time since they ran just one 1,600-meter effort all out.
Luke Parker leading the charge, 1 lap down, 3 laps to go, 4 laps around the track. 1,600-meter run is the first of 2 scores for 100 points here in individual event number 1. Just behind him, Austin Hatfield.
There we go.
Bailey Martin, Jack Rosema, Alexander Caron, Cole Sager. The rest of the field led by Luke Parker. Almost didn't recognize Luke without his beard.
Luke looking very polished. He got his games fit on. He's got his games haircut and his facial hair rocking. He's looking very relaxed at the front there. And Austin Hatfield, with a bit of a quicker stride frequency, shorter, choppier steps, is looking relaxed as well, and has actually closed the gap on Luke with the initial tempo that he set.
Luke Parker with a baseball background collegiately, as Austin Hatfield's keeping pace with him, who also 3-sport athlete in high school: soccer, football, baseball.
And one thing that stands out, I mean, I know that Luke Parker has a background before he started CrossFit and competing in triathlon. So he's used to these longer energy systems. Again, probably very confident against a traditional CrossFit in a foot race, at least in his own mind. But I'm not sure how familiar he is with Austin Hatfield. He has listed a 48-second 400, Chase. So when it comes to having that type of speed and kick, you wonder, is Hatfield just trying to keep Parker in striking distance throughout this race so that he can reel him in on the final lap?
Luke Parker making the turn. Austin Hatfield's keeping pace, and these two looks like they have separated themselves from the pack. As we are into our 3rd lap of 4 here for the track portion of track and field. Luke Parker currently sitting in 23rd place overall.
Still looking composed there, controlled breathing, looks to be in complete control. And that's really what you want to look for, especially as he seems to be making the attempt now to break the tension or break the band between he and Austin Hatfield. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Coming into the final lap. Luke Parker leads the field in heat number 1. 2 heats total of the individual men. Austin Hatfield behind him, trying to keep pace. 1 lap left to go in this 1,600-meter run.
Here comes Travis Mayer, putting himself just ahead of that pack now to at least lead the next group coming through.
Luke Parker is extending his lead on Austin Hatfield. Just past the 4-minute mark. First turn is down. First straightaway underway. Austin Hatfield trying to do everything he can to keep pace with Luke Parker. Luke Parker extending his lead. The rest of the pack is trying to run down Austin Hatfield, so though Luke Parker looks safe, Austin Hatfield is not.
And if you're watching this and tuning in and not sure, like, well, why doesn't he slow down? He's clearly got the win. There's a whole stable of another 20 athletes waiting to see what the time to beat is in order to control and dictate the outcome. So he's got to reach and he's got to push his threshold in the final straightaway.
Final 100 meters for Luke Parker. Opening it up, leaning forward. Austin Hatfield doing everything he can to stay away from the pack, but they're trying. Watch out for Bailey Martin.
As he wants to finish.
Luke Parker will finish right over 5 minutes. Austin Hatfield
for Parker.
Is going to be able to hold on to second, and Bailey Martin. That is Peter Ellis sneaking in ahead of Bailey Martin and Travis Mayer. So Peter Ellis has moved himself into a third place position in this first heat.
What a push there by Peter Ellis, so impressive. Travis Mayer there, those guys were slugging it out.
Foot race to the finish line, every place matters. And of course it'd be the two guys I can't even tell apart between Bruno Marines and Ruan Potkater. But when they're side by side, I can't get it wrong. The only thing I can get wrong is how to say their name. Moritz Fiebig crossing the finish line. And as we know that Moritz is here out of solidarity for his friend Lazar. Is just, he's going to continue the event. Luke Parker, just over 5 minutes on that. And as we pass the 6-minute mark, there will be a short reset before we hit part number 2.
And this race right out of the gate was Luke Parker taking the inside, taking it aggressively, and setting the tone. Not as much for the pack as I had initially assumed. This was for him and him alone, understanding his threshold, what he needed to do to come across that finish line at just about the 5-minute mark, and he did just that, setting himself up very, very nicely for a difficult time to beat and time to chase down for the heat that awaits.
1,600 meters done for Parker.
Luke Parker will take heat number 1 as we are approaching that 12-minute mark. 5:06.02. Austin Hatfield holds on to second, and Peter Ellis sneaks up into third place. Take a part 1 done. Part 2 getting set for the individual men. Heat number 1 of 2. Part 2. Sprint style on the field coming up next.
75-yard factory, and then as we meet that 100-yard sprint to the finish line.
I was a young one, I was a no one, I was a beast and I was a heathen, looking for loved one, now I'm the new one, seeking to prove one, look in my eyes and try to find the time is mine. Remember when they look down on me, what? Hey, now we know you can't look down on me, what? When I do the background, never when I back down, never when I tap out now. Even if I lose, I'ma choose to maneuver, in time on the move, I'ma keep it moving, so. You mean now they nothing to say, I'm running the game, it's in my town, who running the town, figure me out, what?
Part one is done. Part two is getting set to go as we are on the field portion of track and field. Adrian, we just saw them running 1,600-meter run. They've got about a 6-minute break. I put that in quotes, massive quotes if you can't see that. And now we move to field.
That's right, and the field's going to be a 50-yard sprint to a 100-pound star-shaped bag. They're going to run it back to the start line, 75-yard sprint, carry another star back, and then it's a 100-yard sprint all the way through the finish.
Two heats in this overall track and field event, and this is heat number one. This is your bottom half of the athletes in the last three scored events, as they're getting ready to take on the field portion, as you said, Adrian. And a couple athletes to keep our eye on is one of the most tenured athletes of when he began, and it was Travis Mayer, who started all the way back in 2013.
That's right, and since then he's been here 9 times. He's a father of 4, and he is a staple in our community, but he's got still a little bit of fitness left in him, if you can't tell by the way he ran that last 1,600 meters, and he's an athlete, so he's going to perform well on the field.
And another dad in the field, and you talk about staple in this, 11 consecutive CrossFit Games to Cole Sager, and this is a man who knows his way around a field sprint.
That he does. Friday Night Lights going to be a special for Cole Sager coming out of the Washington University.
50-yard sprint down the field to Happy Star, a 100-pound sandbag. They'll pick it up to the shoulder and run it back. A feat of strength people probably don't even understand and even get it to the shoulder. 50 yards back. Bjorkman Carl Goodmanson currently in the lead. And a 3-man race between Luke Parker, Travis Mayer, Callum Clements, Moritz Fiebig. And it looks like Luke Parker is starting to pull ahead, and Luke Parker just set the time to beat in the 1,600. 75 yards, 100-pound sandbag sprint.
This is where you got to be sure to get the star in a good position so you can freely move that off arm and allow yourself to keep good tempo toward that start line and give yourself great momentum coming out of this turn for the final sprint.
Luke Parker just trying to hold on to this as long as Travis Mayer tracking him down, and then we have a 100-yard sprint across the football field. Luke Parker trying to get run down by Travis Mayer. Parker pulling away. Parker pulls the back-to-back for heat number one.
That's over fast. Great mechanics there by Parker all the way through the run. Once he got an opportunity to open it up, driving the elbows back, driving the knees through, good neutral head position. It allowed him to have a great final kick, just like he was able to execute on that 1,600 meters for time.
Now, the way they're scoring this, Adrian, as we said before when the women were going, they're going to take your place finish in the 1,600. Say it's 5th, and then your place finish on the sprint. Let's say it's 10th. You get 15 points. They'll do that top to bottom, lowest points wins. They'll rank you 1 to 40.
That's right, and Luke Parker was able to salvage the best opportunity for himself possible, taking a 1 and a 1. It's only something that we saw Tia do on the women's side today, and Luke Parker was able to do it here on the 1,600 meter and on the sandbag. He used that unorthodox stabilized position on his back where he actually wasn't pumping any arms, just running faster with his legs, and then here you see his full sprinting capacity on display, even under fatigue.
Luke Parker takes the back-to-back, pulls himself a Tia Toomey, and we saw on the individual women's side, 106.